All right, we are going to start building up some of these coils, and this is another drawing that I did that kind of has a little more continuity with the design, and knowing that my coil pot may not look exactly like this, but this is my plan, and that's the idea with you guys too. Try to have a plan. Remember, you can use some different elements inside the coils. Like here's a couple of little samples that show a little variety is cool. That the idea of doing like a little spiral or a teardrop or a flower or just beads or something like that. I'm going to do rainbows and beads in my design. And also, as we go along, you'll see that around the design, you should always be able to see a rainbow and a bead or a couple of them. So I have this off to the side as a reference. Okay, and that's something you will be handing in. Okay, so hang on to it, make sure your name is on it and all that stuff. And now my pinch pot that I made a few days ago, actually, I took it out of the plastic bag a few times and I wiped some water on here so it wouldn't get too dry. And you need to keep it a little bit on the moist side, a little kind of tacky. It has stiffened up some. Remember, don't bend it. You want to keep it nice and stiff. This is like your support system for the coils that are going to be up on top. All right, also off to the side, I have my bag of clay, but look how I have it wrapped up. Okay, I'm just going to kind of dig in there and grab a little bit of clay when I need it and wrap it back up again. It's really important to keep that clay moist so we don't waste it. Also, off to the side a little bit, I can probably keep that right there. And I have a couple tools for scoring. I have a toothpick, and I have that little screw because I'm going to be doing some scoring. And I have a spoon that's going to be nice, I think, or the handle of a spoon to kind of blend some clay together. I'm going to be applying some water. If you did this with a little sponge, I could apply water with a toothbrush, just kind of dab some water on. I mentioned before that you might want to save some of those little shavings and tiny little crumbs to make some slip. So just a little while ago, I took some of that and I added just very little bit of water. And it does take a little bit of work. If it's awfully runny and watery, I'd pour a little water out. But then it took a good 5 minutes at least to really kind of get that clay to look like slip. Um, it's almost paint. It drips off. It almost drips off this pencil, but not quite, because there's kind of a thickness to it. I can use that if I want to. You don't have to, but I'll show you how you can as we get going. So, a couple of things to make a coil. And now, I'm not going to be working on this for just a minute. So, I'm going to keep it covered up. Okay, and I'll just put it right off to the side here. To make a coil, it takes a little bit of practice. So you're going to make these coils that might be about the thickness of a pencil, but they don't start off that way. They're a little bit thicker. It's better to show you like this. When you make a coil, you're going to roll the clay under your hand at a certain point. And when you do that, you do not just want to go like this right there. You need to make sure the clay goes all the way around plus some and all the way back. So when you do that, you want to think about going from your fingertips like all the way to like the base of your hand, all the way back and forth. The thicker the coil, the more you have to do that. And notice how my hand is kind of going up and down a little bit. That might help you a little bit as well. I make sure to have my fingers kind of stiff. If you're really relaxed with your fingers, it'll just go, blumpity blumpity under your fingers. And you need to kind of work your way, apply a little bit of pressure to force that roundness. And you'll see how it works here. And again, I've made lots of coils, so it's going to look kind of easy for me. You will need to practice a little bit. And notice the first thing I did, I got just the tiniest bit of water in my hands. They're not shiny wet, but at least I'm not going to have dried out hands to work on it. And you may have been noticing by now that the clay can dry your skin out. So you will need to, it's good to have some lotion at your house to use. See, that's going to be enough to make a good long coil. And luckily, and if the clay's starting to feel dry, see there's little cracks in the clay. Those little tiny cracks sometimes says that means that the clay is getting a little bit dry. So I'm going to just dip my finger and just kind of squish it and roll it around. Get some moisture back in that clay. You're going to make a little smeary mess, so be sure to clean up after yourself. But first I'm going to just roll it in my hands like that, just to start to get it to be kind of round. But that's too thick. Now I'm going to put it down and do what I was just talking about. I'm going to roll it back and forth. And as I roll, I'm kind of going this way and that way, slowly. And again, it doesn't matter if this coil reaches all the way around. Now, honestly, I would not make 10 coils and then start building. I'd make one coil and apply it, then one other thing and apply it. Because the more you let this sit around, the drier it's going to get. And then if you curl it, if you wrap it around, it's liable to crack here. All right, but I'm not going to use this for a second. So I'm going to keep it covered up. Let's see, I'll put it right there in my bag, and I'm going to put it there. So again, this is about the size of a pencil. It's about the same thickness as the rim of my pot, which is kind of what you want. And again, the thickness of this clay, you can see it compared to a pencil. It's kind of close. If anything, it's just a little tiny bit thicker than that, but anywhere close to that. So that clay, keep it covered up. Your extra clay, keep it covered up. Now, we need to do some quick scoring. So scoring is not done just in one direction. Actually, this one's pretty sturdy. Oh, I forgot my fork. Well, you'll just have to bear with me for a second. And I'm going to score it with longer lines. And as I'm doing this, if you can tell, I'm kind of crisscrossing my lines. And we're getting some of those shavings to lift up, those moist little shavings of clay. That's a good thing, because when we add water to that, or slip, remember slip kind of acts like glue, or when you score the clay, when you add water to this clay, it turns into its own little thing of slip right there. So you don't necessarily have to apply slip. Some people like to. If you do need to score it every single time, it makes it much sturdier. It makes a much better connection. And I'm only going to attach a few things, then I'll put it in time lapse so you can see me do more work. And I'm just going to go one more time, kind of in a lot of different directions. See, that's nice and scratched up. Okay. Now, where's my paintbrush? There it is. I'm not going to brush the paint on. I'm just going to go dab, 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 because I don't want to lose the texture. If you have a larger brush, that's fine. And or I could have done this. I can take a little bit of that slip and just kind of pat it on there. Again, same kind of thing. A little bit of both is even fine too. Now, here's the difference between now, instead of scoring this coil, because this coil is, since it's so flimsy and you try to score it, it doesn't work all that well. So when you add little things to a scored area, sometimes we'll just dip it in the water. Just a quick little dip, let a few drops come off, and then you can place it. Now, I kind of did this on purpose. I wanted you to see that you don't need to have that coil reach all the way around, because we can make another coil and patch it in, and I'll show you how to do that. So with this, I'm just kind of giving it a little squeeze and a push. Squeeze and a push, squeeze and a push. And sometimes that makes the coil a little bit longer, and it might even get closer to each other over here. But before I go much farther, oops, I forgot my little piece of scratch paper. If you leave a little piece of scratch paper under here, it'll kind of, again, spin on your surface a little bit easier. Just when I do this, I'm squeezing it from both sides, right there, and from the top, so it still maintains its shape. This will help maintain a really good connection. So, really fast, since that coil didn't reach all the way around, I'm going to make a short one. and it's a little bit too long. See, it's very close to the same thickness. So now I'm just going to kind of measure it, and I can tear that. I can use that clay, so keep it in good shape. And I'm going to dip it in water. Make sure you can see this okay. And that's a little bit longer than I need, so I can find something just to kind of cut it off a little bit. Now I'm going to score the ends of these two coils so that it gets a good connection. And I'm going to let one coil kind of overlap a little bit like that. Just if you try to make it a perfect fit just like that, it won't work as well. I'm going to overlap and let them kind of pinch into each other. So look at this. I'm going to just go a little bit of a pinch here, a little bit of a pinch right there, and then they will kind of blend into each other. And as soon as you hold it steady, and you can use the back of your fingernail, you can use a utensil, a knife, the handle of a fork. I'm going to add a little water to that, make it slippery. You could use the handle of a toothbrush. You could use anything that's kind of firm to make that, to connect it. Okay, so we have our first coil going around, and now the outside of the pot, we want to see where the coils are. Now you might get some areas that kind of gets blended right there. We'll come back and clean that out a little bit, but for the most part, you want to keep it that little line. And I would, if I were you, I would take a very slightly moist paintbrush, or you could use a slightly moist Q-tip or something like that that you have around, and just kind of seal it. See that? It's just kind of cleaning up that little seal right there. That's a really good thing to do as you go. The best time to do this work is right when the clay gets attached. And I'm holding this up like this so hopefully you can see it a little better. So there's a little lump right here that kind of got blended in. So if it gets blended in a little bit, we'll come back with a pencil or something and kind of make that coil look like there's really kind of a coil on the outside. Now, the inside's different. We want to make sure this pot remains structurally sound. We don't want cracks to happen on the inside. They will work their way to the outside. So, lots of different things: a fingernail, the handle of a paintbrush, the handle of a spoon or a fork or something like that. We have to always support it on the outside while we kind of push some clay down into that little line between the pot and the coil. We want to really seal it on the inside. So if you were to look inside of this coil pot later, it would be smooth. You would not see where the coils are. So it's just that little movement, and this hand out here is keeping the coil from getting pushed out. You always support the clay on the opposite side. Now I think it's a good idea, just an ever so slightly moist fingertip, and we can start to, and this work is kind of like what Maria did, right? Except she blended her coils in completely on the inside and the outside. This pot, we want to see the coils on the outside. Okay, so you can barely see it still. You can still see. Whoop, let's get up there close. You can still see in parts of it where that coil is. So I need to do a little more work trying to really, if you see, so you can see that line right there. I hope you can, right here. Or let's see, go this way. See, right here, there's that little crack right there. I want to make sure all those little cracks are sealed up, because we want to make sure that, see, air will want to get inside that crack and dry the clay from the inside out. And it will start to make cracks in it. Again, let's get a paintbrush and Then I can kind of wipe off some of the water in the paintbrush and get in there. And again, these fingers right out here are supporting the coil. Okay, you don't want to push out on the coil. We're just trying to blend it together. And I'm holding this like this, so hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Typically, I would be down here working. So you don't have to hold yours up like this to do this. Okay, so that one's looking pretty good. Now, my design says I have to make little beads and rainbows. So I covered that up for a minute because I'm going to make a few beads and just a few rainbows. Okay, my beads, I think that's a good amount of clay to make it. Just, again, look at my hands. They're getting dry. So just a little bit of water there. I'm going to make a bead. And I want all my beads to be pretty close to the same size. So let's see, there's one. And if you make a few, you will want to definitely keep them covered up. So there's another one. Pinch off a little bit of clay, keep that clay covered up. That's a little bit too much clay there. And then we'll make a rainbow as well. Okay, there's 3 of those. I'm going to keep those nice and covered up under the plastic. Now, there's going to be 2 ways I could make these rainbows. One, I could make them in 2 parts. Let me show you I could make half of a disc right here and then another one right there. Okay, but I'm going to make them with 1 piece of clay and then just carve a line right there for these little parts. So I'm going to make a ball. A lot of things start with a ball. Then I'm going to kind of I have to make it kind of flat, like a pancake. So you can just kind of pat on it. Remember, it should have some decent thickness to it, right? It should not be paper thin because it needs to support some other clay on top. And to make that, it's basically like a half circle, right? So I'm going to just tap it and kind of shape it a little bit. That flat surface right there will help make it connect, and just kind of shape it. Oh my gosh, what do I have? Ooh, look at me. Oh no, that's not round. I thought I had something round. I'll use this. If you find something round to use as an impression, it's totally cool. Now, whoops, you didn't see that. All I did was, on the table, I just pushed that right, I had a highlighter. Ooh, watch this. This has little corners on it. So little corners. So I'm going to put it in there and kind of rotate it. Check this out. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit. That'll round off those corners. Whoopsie. So there's my little rainbow. Whoops, sorry. There's my little rainbow. Okay. Now I can start to attach a few things. So I'm going to make a rainbow, and this is on a round thing. So I'm going to make this a little bit round. I'm going to just barely make it a little bit round right there. See right there, just barely made it round. Now this is big enough to score. I'm going to score this. I'm going to score it really well. Again, a toothpick, the tip of a nail, the tip of a screw. And again, it's really kind of lifting up a lot of those little shavings of clay. Again, when you score wet clay like this, notice how my finger was here and I'm supporting it so it doesn't move around. And I'm doing a little extra scoring here. Now I can apply some water. Boom, boom. So you just dab some water on here. Or I can take a little bit of slip as well. I can put a little bit of slip right there. A little bit of water. And again, I call it a push and smush. I'm going to put that guy right on there. And I want it to go straight up. Okay? If anything, it should come out a little tiny bit. but not really. We're trying to make these go pretty straight up. I don't want you to make it go in. I want you to control that. So I have to make sure it goes straight up, okay? And I have to give it a little bit of a push and a smush. Not too hard because you don't want to squish that soft clay right there. On the inside, I'm going to take something. Again, I'm going to support it with my finger on the outside and use that inside, hold it steady. Use something kind of firm to push that clay down so it has a good connection. And I can use the paintbrush to blend it together. Again, there's not a lot of water in here. I'm just using it as a blending tool. I'm not trying to get it wet. And right here, where it makes contact, I don't want that line to show. So I'm going to use my little toothpick as kind of a blending tool also. Over here too, I'm going to use that little toothpick as a blending tool. And there are going to be some times when we will have to fill in some spots where they accidentally kind of didn't fill in. All right, so there's one of those, and you get faster at this, you guys. Don't worry, you will get faster. The beads, I'm going to put just one here and one over here. There may be a bead in the middle. So then I'll start trying to develop the coils around it. Honestly, if I were you, the bottom of your bead, I would give it a little tap. Make it a little bit of a flat spot right there. So when I score and attach it, it has a little more surface area to attach to. And again here, it's okay if I do I'm going to attach a coil down here. So it's okay to score that. And I'm going to score this just a little bit since it's easy to hold on to. I can just kind of give that a little stretching. Going to dab some water on there, dab a little water on there, and give it a little bit of a wiggly push and smush. Try to keep it round. And there's not a lot else I can do to that one since it's kind of small. Excuse me. Now, I'll do more. I'll do that, and then I will start to put a coil around it, but I want to put it into time lapse so you don't have to sit and watch me do it. You've got the main idea here. Every time I add a coil, you have to score the bottom area before you attach the coil. And you can only go so far in one session. So it's going to be okay that you just do maybe a couple of coils in the class period. Then you have to kind of cover it up and let it firm up a little bit overnight to do a little bit more. All right, I have to wash my hands off. I'll put this in time lapse, and hopefully you'll see me do a few more coils. It just takes a little bit of time, and we'll see you in a minute. Okay, to kind of recap what's going on here, guys, you can see it takes a lot of work inside and out to get this to kind of be under control. This clay right now is pretty flimsy. Okay, you could easily bend it, but don't. You need this to firm up a little bit. I will put some more beads right here and right here to help fill up that space. So it might be a little bit different from my design, but I'm trying to stay true to the design. There are a few things that happen if you notice at the end. Somewhere on what I think it was right here, I saw a little hole. So I made a little tiny, like a teardrop of clay. I did a little scoring and I dipped that teardrop of clay and I kind of pushed it into that hole. And then, just like before, when the clay is this soft, don't try to do the final little touch-ups. Let the little lumpity-bumpities just be there. You're not going to get them out right now. If anything, you'll just make them worse. Okay, and another thing that happened is when I would make a coil, and when you stress the clay out, it cracks. So if I start to do this, oh, this clay is nice and fresh. Oh, see, there they go. See those little cracks? As soon as you put this on here and you see those little cracks, boy, immediately, absolutely right away, get a little water on your fingertip and just kind of give it a little bit of pressure and a little bit of moisture, and you can get rid of those cracks. Or whenever you start to see those little cracks, even like sometimes if it's in the little tiny spots, you can use a little bit of pressure with a little bit of moisture in your paintbrush. Um, so this takes a while. I don't want this already a long enough video as it is, but you will continue to make yours up, and each time, every day you work on it the next day, it'll be a little bit firmer. If you try to go too high, too fast, it's going to be really wobbly and difficult to work with. So you want to be careful. I think all I'm going to do after I shoot the video here is just put those beads right there and then call it done. So I'm just going to score it right there. I would not add water to this when you bag it, but you must bag it really well. Don't add water because you want this clay up here to firm up just a little bit before you start to work on it on the next session. Anytime over the weekend, you guys make sure that you may open up your bag one time and sprinkle just a tiny bit of water, just to kind of keep it from drying out. It shouldn't. And again, I'm going to make more of these and score and kind of give those a wiggly push and smush right there. And I'll put those right there, and you'll see that next time. And we'll hopefully next video we'll kind of see how to finish it off and do some little touch-ups, and we might even do a little bit of relief sculpting down here. All right, there you go. Have fun with it and be patient with this. This pot takes a little while, but it has a really neat kind of design quality to it as well.